The popular image of the Roman soldier is heavily filtered through theater and film. We imagine ranks of identical men standing in polished chrome, topped with oversized red plumes. The reality on the empire's frontiers was driven by a much grimmer set of requirements. This is the Theilenhofen R387, an infantry helmet forged from iron and bronze in the late 2nd century CE, recovered near a Bavarian frontier fort. Archaeologists often classify this style as an Imperial Italic helmet. This is a modern label used to group surviving artifacts into a broader family of headgear. A Roman quartermaster never used that term, nor did they order a perfectly standardized model from a centralized factory. The archaeological record reveals a staggering amount of local variation. Surviving bulls show custom bronze fittings, swapped cheek pieces, and heavy repairs, indicating these were personal working tools maintained over years of active service. The design of this helmet represents an ongoing process of kinetic problem-solving. Armorers had to engineer a defense system that maximized cranial protection against heavy weapons, while simultaneously preserving a soldier's biological necessities. Understanding the Roman war machine requires viewing the Theilenhofen artifact as a map of biomechanical engineering. This schematic illustrates the baseline anatomical challenge. Armor must shield the cranium without obstructing vital sensory zones: eyes, ears, mouth, and neck. The first line of defense is shape. A rounded dome deflects a strike, forcing kinetic energy to slide off rather than transferring force into the skull. But the metal shell alone is incomplete. These helmets originally contained thick internal linings made of leather, felt, or layered textiles, all of which have long since decayed in the archaeological record. If a bare iron bowl rested directly against the scalp, a heavy blow would transfer lethal concussive force straight into the brain, even if the metal itself held together. The lining created a gap. That internal empty space, acting as a suspension system, absorbed the remaining impact shock. The dense, chaotic combat reliefs carved into Trajan's column show the brutal conditions of the Dacian Wars in the early 2nd century. Shifting enemy tactics and weapon types forced Roman armorers to rapidly adapt their metallurgy. A primary catalyst for this adaptation is the Dacian falx, an immense two-handed polearm terminating in a forward-curving iron blade. Because of its extreme leverage and hooked geometry, the falx could deliver devastating downward cuts capable of cleaving straight through older, unreinforced Roman helmets. To see how Rome engineered a solution, we look to the top of the R387. Armorers riveted two narrow iron strips over the bowl, creating a cross-shaped reinforcement directly across the crown. This crossbar design localized the defense. It added critical metal thickness exactly along the skull's most vulnerable fault lines, protecting against overhead strikes, without requiring a thicker, uniformly heavier iron bowl. Along the front edge, a thick, horizontal metal brow band stretches across the forehead to reinforce the rim against direct facial strikes. The reinforced crown and heavy brow band represent a highly efficient response to a specific kinetic threat. The armor maximized survivability in melee combat, while strictly controlling the total weight carried by the infantrymen. Defense is useless if the wearer is suffocated or blinded. A soldier who cannot effectively see or breathe in the crush of a battle line will not survive it. Examining the lower half of the artifact, the hinged cheek pieces hang down to guard the jawline and the sides of the head. The design deliberately leaves the large central portion of the face entirely exposed. High-exertion melee combat requires immense oxygen intake. A solid, restrictive faceplate would trap heat and restrict breathing, becoming a lethal liability for the infantryman. You can also observe that the cheek guards do not cover the ears. The helmet bowl features carefully shaped cutouts specifically to leave the ears exposed, often shielded by small riveted flaring guards. This diagram demonstrates why hearing was a tactical necessity. A Roman cohort relied heavily on auditory commands from officers, shouted orders, and horn blasts to coordinate maneuvers and maintain tight formation. The open face and ear cutouts preserved the situational awareness required for a soldier to maintain his position within this formation-based fighting system. The rear architecture of the R387 features a heavily stepped profile, backed by deep horizontal ribs stamped into the iron. Below these ribs, a flat neck guard extends outward. This projection functions mechanically to catch descending blades that slide off the dome, physically pushing the lethal force away from the vulnerable base of the spine. Pop culture frequently depicts all Roman troops marching in highly ornate, fully enclosed metal helmets. Enclosed Roman headgear did exist. This piece, found in the same region as the R387, features an intricate enclosed bronze face mask. However, this is a specialized piece of cavalry sports equipment, designed for display and mock battles. It is entirely separate from the functional, working identity of the frontline infantry helmet. The same logic applies to helmet crests. As this stone relief shows, large plumed crests certainly existed, primarily to denote rank, unit identification, or for parade display. But standard working infantry gear in the 2nd century would not typically feature a permanent, oversized red crest in daily combat. Theatrical relief work, solid face masks, and towering crests belong in ceremonies and parades. In contrast, the frontline infantry helmet was an austere, purely functional tool of war. When we reassemble the parts, the deflecting dome, the heavy brow band, the crossbars, the ear guards, and the neck plate, the R387 emerges as a single, cohesive defense system. But the surface of a working Roman helmet would not be pristine. It accumulated dents, deep scratches, uneven patina, and discoloration. These artifacts spent years exposed to frontier weather. Because armor was highly valuable, a single helmet could pass through the hands of multiple soldiers, enduring decades of active service. Scratched iron does not imply neglect. Roman soldiers rigorously maintained, oiled, and repaired their equipment to keep it battle-ready. The rough surface of the surviving artifact is a testament to its engineering. It endured decades of use because it was a rugged, maintainable piece of military hardware. Placed on the head of a 2nd century infantryman standing watch at a frontier fort, the helmet reveals its final engineering requirement. An internal suspension gap and a tight leather chin strap secured the iron shell, locking all these disparate elements into a stabilized, wearable system. The engineering triumph of the Imperial Italic design lies in this balance. It successfully mitigated intense kinetic energy from specialized weapons, while preserving the soldier's physical ability to fight alongside other men. The Roman army protected its soldiers through constant adaptation and regional craftsmanship, never relying on a single frozen design. The Imperial Italic helmet looks distinctly Roman because its form perfectly follows its function. Every rivet, iron width, and reinforced crossbar is a calculated answer to the specific, brutal problems of the ancient battlefield.